Yeah.
What's on the Facebook page?
Well, then I could probably share it tonight.
It won't pop up yet, but yeah.
Oh, it won't?
No, it'll take a couple minutes. That's usually why I let it delay some. The first thing I need is my glasses. What's up, everyone?
Hello, hello.
You don't realize how important your glasses are until you stop wearing them.
Yeah, my eyesight, I've lost 90% vision in my right eye, and I did that skydiving. I detached 2 retinas.
Skydiving?
Yeah, I've got about 500 skydives, and
cool.
Yeah.
All right, so you ready to do this?
Sure.
What's up, everybody? Nice. My name is Tim Stoddard. Welcome to SoberNation.com. Today we're going to try something a little bit different. I have a Facebook Live interview with my new friend, Mr. Tim Ryan. Tim, thanks
Hello,
for
how are we?
Hey,
thanks for having me.
Sure, of
Thanks
course.
for the coffee, too.
Sure. What I like to do when I do these interviews, truth be told, it's always easier for me, and I think it's better for the audience if you just sort of introduce yourself a little bit. So for people that haven't read the article, which isn't that many because it seemed like everybody read that article about you, which Tori wrote, and I thought was a fantastic piece. Why don't you just briefly introduce yourself, tell people what you do, what you believe in, and then maybe we can just take it from there.
Yeah, so my name's Tim Ryan, obviously. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and drug addict, and I always say I go by R68915. That's my Illinois Department of Corrections number. That's where I got clean and sober was.
You did it the good way.
Getting sentenced to 7 years in prison for my 3rd DUI, my 5th driving on revoke, and possession of drugs. I struggled with addiction for 30 years. You name it, I did it. The last 12 years, I thought it was a bright idea after being clean and sober a year, going to meetings but not working a program, because I'm the guy that thought he'd get sober through osmosis, to pick up heroin. And that took me down a 12-year rabbit hole. And in prison, that's where I truly surrendered. I didn't go until 44 years old. I weighed 158 pounds. I was skin and bone. I was walking death and was profusely sick for 2 weeks. And that's where I surrendered to God. And in Illinois, there's 28 prisons. 2 have therapeutic drug treatment programs. And by the grace of God, I got into one of them. When I walked through the gates of prison, I was probably the happiest person ever to walk in the Illinois Department of Corrections, because I knew the way they ran the case, I'm going to do a year and a half, maybe 2, but I had time to work on me. But I did 13 and a half months. In the midst of that, all I did with my former cellmate, Big Perk, who was a gang chief for 25 years. We studied the Big Book Bible, NA Basic Text, read hundreds of books. My wife divorced me in prison after 18 years, lost our house in foreclosure. I walked out after 13 and a half months, for the first time in my life, 13 and a half months clean and sober. And I set up my foundation. I'm executive director and founder of a Man in Recovery Foundation. My motto is we take people from dope to hope, help one addict at a time. And I basically guide and direct people into treatment, whether you have insurance, no insurance, state insurance. The funds we raise, I've got a number of programs that people that have burned up their insurance or have never had good insurance, I can put them in 4 to 6 month programs, maybe more AA Big Book boot camps or hardcore Christian-based programs, but beggars can't be choosers, but people are turning their lives around. But I can get them in for $1,000. Or I'll pay for someone to get in their first 2 weeks or 30 days of a sober home. That's all we do. Set up my foundation, started some family support groups where I had the loved ones, mom and dad, come with the person struggling at the same time. I stumbled into work in the treatment space, and then on my 21-month sobriety date, my 20-year-old son, Nicholas, succumbed to a heroin overdose. And I had 2 choices that day, go to a meeting or get high, and I never thought of using. I went to a meeting, and I never looked back.
So Tim, I hate to cut you off.
Go ahead.
And it's always touchy when you interview people about family situations, because you're never sure exactly where that line is, where they're comfortable talking about it.
I'll talk about anything.
And you've been pretty forthcoming about your son. How long ago was that?
Nick died August 1st of 2014.
Okay, so it was pretty recent.
Yeah, 3.5 years ago. He's 20 years old.
Do you think that it was a failure in the treatment process? Do you think maybe it was a personal failure on his part? And I only ask because last year especially was probably the hardest year for me in terms of losing people, especially from heroin overdoses. Yeah. And the last 3 years, I think the the tone of the article and a lot of the work that you've done has been specifically about the heroin epidemic. Where is this coming from?
So in hindsight, and this shocks people, but I'll be the first to say I helped kill my own son. And that's something I have to live with for the rest of my life. Nick and I, it's read my book. Long story short, when I was fighting my case, and I'll answer your question, about 3 months in, Nick was 17, I'm dope sick, he knows what's going on, and he comes in the bathroom, he said, "What's wrong, Pops?" "What do you think, Nick?" "I'm dope sick." And he said, "Not anymore," and he threw 2 bags of heroin on the counter. So I got out of the tub and I did them. And I went in his room and I said, "What the hell are you doing?" And he said, "Don't worry, Dad, I'm just selling a little bit." I said, "Nick, this isn't weed, this is heroin. You know what this drug has done to me." And he looked right at me and said, "Well, Dad, you're a successful drug addict." And I said, "Why would you say that?" "Well, we got a nice house, you got an office in the Wrigley building, you make a good living." So in Nick's delusional mind, because I functioned, I was successful. 3 months later, we started doing heroin together. That's how I bonded with my son prior to going to prison. Nick had been to treatment 6 times. I failed him as a father because I was his friend. And I was in active addiction. Even though I was in addiction, I'm trying to help my son, and it's crazy. From 13, 14, he had got caught up in the court system, the treatment. He had been to treatment 6 times. In hindsight, what I know today, my son would have been on a plane to Florida in a New York minute. In a second, because he had been to one center 5 times and another one once. Nick loved treatment. Nick liked treatment. Nick did not know what to do when he got out of treatment. I remember one time we had him in a sober home, in one of the best ones in the Chicagoland area, and Shannon, my former wife, and I went to visit him, and he said, "Dad, I'm not going to make it here." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, yeah, I've got to have a job, and I lost my license, so I've got to ride my bike, and I'm riding my bike 15 miles a day to scam old people in a call center, and if I'm not back by 6 at night, I'm getting kicked out." And it was a week later, it was a rainy night, he got back at 6:30, they kicked him out. So our system set these people up to fail. You know, treatment's just the beginning. There's so much more that needs to be implemented afterwards. But on the flip side, Nick knew what to do. When I was
been through the system so
yeah,
many times.
after I got out of prison at night, I did 13 and a half months. So when I was about 19 months sober, Nick was in treatment for the 6th time. And I went to visit with him. He's like, "Dad, I want to speak all over the country. We got a crazy story." I said, "Dude, I love it. Please get sober." "I will." 30 days out of treatment, he's back in jail. Selling bogus pills, trying to buy heroin. He did 30 days in Cook County, did another 15 in Kane from a case when he had OD'd and spit in an ambulance driver's face, assault of a peace officer. He did 45 days total, got out. Shannon, his mother, picked him up, took him to lunch, fed him, and said, "We're done. You're not coming to my house, you're not coming to Dad's, because all you do is lie, cheat, and steal." 5 days out of jail, I called him and said, "Come to my house and get Narcan." And he said, "Dad, don't worry, I'm not on that anymore." And I believed him. 2 days later, Shannon called me at 6 in the morning and said, "Nick OD'd again, I'm coming to get you." I don't share this story much. So when I was in prison, the first time, my wife became a nurse. So we're driving to the hospital, and Shannon said, "Tim, I don't feel it's good." I took my cell phone, my iPhone, and I plugged it into her phone charger. And instantly, 6 a.m., the band comes up. Nikki Sixx's band, Heroin Diaries. The song that comes on is Courtesy Call, and it's about somebody overdosing and dying. And I immediately unplugged it, and we just looked at it. We didn't say a word. We got to the hospital, ran into the emergency room. Tim and Shannon Ryan here to see our son Nick. He overdosed, and 30 seconds later, the chaplain walked out. I knew instantly he was dead. And I'll ask people, what was my next thought? What was my next thought?
That it was your fault?
That, or what else? Most people say you want to get high. There was never a thought in my mind. My next thought was, I'll be at a meeting. But having to go and identify and hear the scream from his mother, and something surreal happened in the hospital, because I can remember Shannon saying, "I hate God, F God, he didn't answer my prayers." And something came over me, and I looked at her and I said, "Shannon, what I'm going to say is going to sting, but you need to listen to me." I said, "Maybe God did answer our prayers, it's just not the answer we were looking for." And 2 weeks later, we had lunch, and Shannon looked me right in the eyes and said, "Tim, for once in my life, I'm behind you 1,000%. She said, "I want you to run your foundation. I want you to help people. I don't want any mother going through what I went through. Heroin took you, my husband, our home, and my firstborn son." She said, I thought about what you said in the emergency room. When I met Shannon, Nick was 3. I adopted him, and we had 3 other kids. She said, I truly believe God put Nick and I in your life for a reason, and had you go through your struggles and had Nick go through his for him to pass on to set the stage for what you're going to do next. And I'm just getting started, but treatment failed. The recovery, our treatment industry, a lot of it's a joke today. It truly is.
It's interesting to hear somebody say that, because the concept of treatment gets brought up a lot with Sober Nation, obviously. It's very, very difficult, at least in my experience, for people to get sober without at least some kind of introductory into the recovery world.
Right.
Most of the time it's
Right.
treatment, right? But there seems to be a real, I mean, the irony behind the word stigma, right? There seems to be a real stigma behind treatment. But people forget that when there's families in need, the first thing they do is call the treatment center, right? So it seems like we
Right.
have this sort of double standard where a lot of times we like to see the flaws in it, but when we need it, it's always the first thing we go to.
And that's a great point. When I first got out of prison, I was going to a support group for parents that had kids in addiction. Mm-hmm. And there was a mother there, and Nick was still alive at the time. And I'm trying to learn and get educated. And I knew a lot, but all right, now I'm on the other side of the fence. I'm sober. I want to hear. And there was this mother at this group, and it's run by a clinician from a local treatment center. And the mother says, oh, my daughter relapsed again. And just send her back. Relapse is part of the journey. And the mom says, my daughter's been to your treatment center 8 times. That's okay. Send her back. Mm-hmm. And I looked at her, and this before I worked in the treatment space. I said, isn't that a little unethical? I said, maybe 2 or 3 times at the same place, but if it's not working, shouldn't you refer them out? You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
yeah, I do. So I researched the treatment industry. When I stumbled into working for it, I started with Banyan and opened a treatment center in Chicago, and I'm with Transformations now. I could work for any treatment center in the country, damn near. I get offers all the time. What I care about is the clinical team has got to be top notch. Mm-hmm. In a lot of places, especially in the Chicago area, they hire what they call a lot of CADC, Certified Alcohol and Substance Abuse Counselor. Anyone can take the course, but they're not therapists. And they're the ones running all the groups all day long. Do they have their place? Yes, maybe being a tech or something, but not working with clients. Mm-hmm. And people ask me, I don't have any degrees. I got a PhD in cardiology and pain. Mm-hmm. And I've taken my abilities to get people to put their hand up to go to treatment. And then once they get out of treatment, whatever that looks like, indigent, state insurance good, then I'll work with them getting into recovery, whatever that looks like. Because recovery isn't just 12-step, it's Christian-based, it's refuge, it's MAT, it says, do what works for you. I have to meet people where they're at. And I had to shift my thinking on that too. But a lot of the treatment centers today, I just don't think they provide quality care. I don't think I was at my center, Transformations, 2 months ago, and I was touring the detox with an individual, and I ran into a kid that was there 90 days prior. So what are you doing back here? I went back to Jersey and I relapsed, and I said, let me ask you a question. Why did you come back here? Mm. He said, I've been to treatment 5 times. He said, you were the only treatment center that had an aftercare plan for me. I didn't follow through, but your alumni team checked in on me. Mm. And when they called, I had just used, and I said I wanted help. He said, if your alumni team wouldn't have been following up with me and actually care about me. And it's not caring about, we want to get you back, but we don't want you to die either. And there's so many haters out there. There's some great treatment. South Florida's got some of the best treatment in the country, has some of the best recovery in the country. Mm-hmm. I've put family members of my own through my treatment program. I believe in it more than anything. There's nothing to sell. And if they don't fit us, we're going to refer you to the right place. Mm-hmm. That's what it's about. And a lot of peer-driven centers are. I was just in San Antonio, Texas, a couple weeks ago, and this philanthropist put up $30 million. They raised another $70 million. They house 700 homeless people a night. But then they've got a program for women, for children. You got a pregnant mom or with a little child, they can live there for free and get full treatment and EMDR and trauma therapy. There's programs out there, but ultimately, I either want to change or I don't.
Yeah.
That's
well, that was really my next question is where do you think is the line where we have to differentiate. This is, you know, the industry, quote unquote, whether you think that's like the government or the private treatment industry, whatever. It's their responsibility to fix this problem, or it's the individual's responsibility to maintain recovery after they leave treatment. Because I went to treatment at basically a welfare-run facility outside of Philadelphia.
Sure.
When I came to Florida, I didn't even know that this whole
thing was down here.
You know
right,
what I mean?
right.
I'm looking around thinking, like, wow, these kids have it so much easier. But looking back, I almost feel like I had an advantageous situation because what I did was so much more personal and really direct in like you and my behavior and my thinking, most importantly. So I often wonder, where is that spot where we say, okay, the treatment center's job is just to get you off the drugs. The person's job is to maintain recovery, and then what do you do when like that relapse rate continues and continues and continues?
Boy, that's a great question. So I got sober in prison. I could sober someone up right outside at the homeless shelter here with the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous.
But don't you think getting sober is the easy part? It's like staying sober.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I see, and people ask me, relapse is part of the journey. No, it's not. You never. I don't believe that. That's the stupidest phrase ever used because I used it. I relapsed again. It's a disease. It was my crutch. So I'm the guy that would go shoot heroin and chair an AA meeting. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't drinking at the time. But what I see in the 122 funerals I've attended since my son died in 3.5 years. I've been to 122 funerals. 90% of those people quit going to meetings. Why did they quit going to meetings? Because they got in a relationship or work became more important. I'm not saying you got to go to meetings for the rest of your life, but what you need to do is change your entire thinking, people, places, and things. Why do I send people down to Florida? To get them out of their current situation. My son could walk out of treatment and go home a half hour. He could have his girlfriend, his buddies, pick him up. Here it's a little bit harder, but you need to be away. You need the phone calls cut off. I put a kid in detox. His mom, I need to talk to him. I said, no, you're part of the problem. You're the biggest enabler in the world. The way I operate, it's real talk. And you take it or leave it, and I don't care who I edge. I've done interventions with billionaire families and homeless people, and I was up in Port St. Lucie with a 72-year-old lawyer yesterday who's an alcoholic. His son's a priest in Rome who flew in. And yeah, crazy, yeah. And he said, all right, I need help, but people need to learn how to. But even with people coming out of treatment, if they're going right back home and the parents have got no help for themselves, you're setting them up to fail.
Agreed.
And I see a lot of parents will call me, Susie's using heroin again. No shit. She had been smoking weed and drinking, and you let this happen. Because you minimize it because she wasn't doing heroin or she wasn't doing oxys anymore. And getting people to realize, you know, don't go the steps I did, till 44, 30 years in and out of the program, because I played my own God, and I like to sponsor myself. My suggestion, everyone should go through a 12-step based program, completely work the steps, take 5 or 10 people through the steps, try Celebrate Recovery, and then gravitate into what works for you. But those 12 steps for me were the framework to my life. Take away the drugs and alcohol. Anyone applies those principles to their life, but most people don't know how to be honest, open-minded, and willing.
It's funny that you say that because I was just having this conversation with somebody that I really care about that isn't an alcoholic but still suffers from some, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, behavior disorders.
Sure.
And I said, everybody can get something out of doing the steps. And I believe what you say as well, because especially after having experiences and listening to so many stories through Sober Nation, you see that there's a lot of different ways that people can turn their lives around, right? But I think that the steps, for me, and I can only speak from my experience, really laid like the proper foundation I needed in order to be able to like receive other kinds of information and other kinds of tools.
And I needed to do it because I needed to get honest. I needed to clean my side of the street. I needed to look at my fears, I lived in resentment. I lived in blame. You know what? Everyone's not dealt some perfect card of hands in life. Everyone comes from some dysfunction, some whatever, and I can live in the past, or I can deal with it, and I can push on and move forward and man up. And that's what a lot of people need to do. But a lot of the families are just as sick or sicker than they are addicted to their addict.
Yeah.
Or to their...
They're solving a problem.
Yeah, and
for them.
You know, I was running my sport group, and I had 80 parents in the room. And one of the moms says, well, I need to know if my son's on step 4. I said, really? Tell me what it is. What? I said, you want to know if your son's on step 4, but you don't even know what it is? I said, how many parents here have read the big book? 2. I said, I'll buy you all books, or go get them. Every one of you should at least read the first 164 pages. And don't just come here, try Al-Anon, Families Anonymous, see a therapist. The person has got to own their recovery. And it's you got to learn to put recovery, God, higher power, Buddha, Fred, Allah, first, and everything will fall into place. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's like the guy coming out of prison thinking in 6 months he's going to be CEO of a company. It doesn't work that way. But everybody wants instant gratification, especially addicts. That's why we did drugs.
Agreed. I think the instant gratification is definitely a huge issue. I wonder what your perspective when people say, but I can't find a God to believe in. Or even the word God. I
I'll
can't
tell you.
find a higher
So
power.
I jokingly say I'm a recovering Catholic. To me, growing up, I was traumatized. My first grade, we had to go to Catholic school. And I will never forget the little girl in front of me putting her hand up. She had to go to the bathroom. And the nun said no, and the girl wet her pants. And that nun pulled her up, lifted up her skirt in front of everyone, and whipped her about 20 times. My mom pulled us out of that school, but then we did CCD and Sunday school. Now, for me, I could go to the priest, Father, I sinned. All right, give me 5 Hail Marys, 5 Our Fathers. Okay, cool. But if you sin, you're going to hell or purgatory. So I was afraid of God. God, to me, was a gift of desperation. I was desperate enough to say, my way doesn't work. I try to live God's will to the best of my ability, and my son Nicholas is every day. That's where I carry Nick. I got his ashes in here, ride or die. And I don't know what God is, but I know there's something out there. Because I've seen the God moments happen in life, in the stories I could tell you on different situations. There's something I've overdosed 8 times. I've been clinically dead 3. I've had 2 minor heart attacks from cocaine. I shouldn't be here. Statistically, I should be dead or back in prison. And for me to be over 5 years sober, being able to sit here with you, don't look at your life. Don't tell me there's no God. And I don't care if you don't believe in it. Don't believe in it. Don't get hung up on the little things. Everything's a little thing.
Yeah, there it is. I think that's the important part for people to realize is they really get hung up on it. Where I think again, for me, the appropriate approach for me was just to say to myself, like, okay, I don't have this thing quite understood yet, but I'm just going to keep going.
Right.
I'm going to keep going. So anyway, thank you very much for that insight. I know that you have some other things going on, and I'm interested to hear a little bit more about your book.
So yeah, and I forgot to bring a couple copies, but Tori and I will go get some afterwards. No, I do have a... So I started writing, the book's an interesting story. I can remember being in the first, I did 3 buildings in prison, and I'm sitting in this plastic chair, looking out the window, looking at whatever they were giving me and saying, how the hell am I here again? What did I do wrong? And I started putting pen to paper. I got out and set up my foundation and wanted to do the book. And on September 19th of 2 years ago, which is my birthday, I got a call from my cop buddy who I do a program called The Cop and the Convict. I'm the convict. We educate parents on cell phone monitoring software and all this stuff. And he says, Tim, is Kyle with you? And I said, yeah. And he said, ask him if he knows Alana Carbonara. And I can use her name because her father's open, and it's in the book. And Kyle says, yeah, why? And he said, well, I'm standing over a dead body. 4 hours later, Rich called me in to come do an intervention with Alana's best friend. They were 18 years old. They were FaceTiming each other, snorting lines of heroin, and Alana died. So I went to visit her mom. Her parents were divorced, and the next day I get a phone call from her dad, Scott. And he says, Tim, you know, I want to thank you for helping my daughter's friend and visiting with my former wife, and I need to meet you because I know who you are. I said, how do you know me? And he said, I happen to be in recovery, and I was at the meeting the night your son died. And I couldn't believe that you're there and your son died 12 hours earlier. And it gives me goosebumps now. We became best friends. God put him in my life for a reason. We spoke at the wake.
Wow.
Well, turns out Scott's a motivational speaker and change management and has published 15 books. So him and his new wife Jocelyn, I commissioned them to help finish my book. And my book is a very real, raw, as you can tell here. I don't candy coat anything.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to quit lying. I needed to put the truth out there, and it's my journey through addiction, the loss of getting out of prison, losing my wife. I lost everything. My home, my wife, everything. My mom had to set up a townhouse for me, and she said the rent's paid for 3 months, and you got $100 a week to live on, and wish you the best of luck. And I got back to work, but it's my journey. And then after losing my son, turning my life around. I'm actually in negotiations for another book right now, but who my book is for is anybody that has someone struggling with addiction. I've had so many parents say, now I know why my husband or my child does what they do. But then for the people in addiction sitting in jail or treatment saying, wow, this gives me hope. That's what it's all about. I am a hope dealer. If I can give people a little bit of hope, that's all I need to do. Let them know that if you got a heartbeat, you got hope. To be aware is to be alive. The book is called From Dope to Hope, Man in Recovery by Tim Ryan. You can get it on Amazon Prime.
Sure.
I'm in negotiations for another one, and I didn't. It's amazing the phone calls. I just had a lady post a video on my Facebook. I guess I'd sent her one, and she's in Australia, and she's like, "This is the most moving book I've ever read," and I did it to help people. You know, people think I paid for everything. I commission them. You don't make money on this, but any money I do make, I put into my nonprofit. So,
yeah, there is something about writing and sharing it with people. Till this day, just on a personal note, all the cool like media production type things I've come up with, there's still the moment when I just get up in the morning and I write and I share it and I get feedback through emails, because we have a pretty big email list, so there's a lot of people that respond to me, which is still really the thing that keeps me going. Like all the fancy computers and the tech shit and all that, it's really just putting words on paper.
It's the messages. Just saying this. I mean, I had a gentleman who became a friend. He runs he's a priest in a prison in Colorado, and I shipped him a case of books, and he's like, "This is the most powerful book I've ever read."
Good for you.
And that's what it's about. It's not people. I've had a lot of cool stuff. The documentary I had on A&E Dope Man and was cool, but having cameras follow you around for a month straight, 14 people, it's a lot of work, and I'm not trying to expose other people's pain, but we're looking at a different angle. I've had some neat stuff happen, but I've also had, my son died. My girlfriend, who became my fiance, became my wife. I'm pregnant. No, God, not mine. Now I've got a 2.5-year-old daughter by the name of Mackenzie. That is my world. She's never seen me drink or use drugs.
That must feel good.
Man, my wife is a recovering alcoholic and bipolar. She's attempted suicide 3 times, postpartum depression, psychotic breaks, and so I deal with this on the home front too, in my own home, and it's a lot of work. I'm in the trenches 24/7. People like, you get to travel all over. I'll be on a plane tonight from 7 o'clock till midnight flying to LA. In 2 days there, and then I'm on a 6 a.m. flight back, and then I'm home for 3 days and back on the road. This is my calling. This is my mission, is to carry the message.
It seems like you're very passionate about it.
I love it.
Yeah.
This is a gift. I get to do this every day. God could take this away like that. Life's a blessing. I still do 4 meetings a week. I still got a sponsor. I always sponsor at least one person. My phone rings 24/7. It's just part of the gig. I don't worry about what other people do. There's a lot of people that do this for the wrong reasons. I spin off. I'm true to myself. My circle's very small.
Okay.
My recovery circle, when I come down to Florida, I take a day. Yesterday, I went up and did this intervention. I was back at my hotel by 1:30. And I went to the beach, and it was windy, and I went and laid by the pool, and I went and had dinner by myself, and I need that downtime too. And I left my phone in the room, and and I just...
That's great, man.
Yeah, got to, man. But I love life. I didn't know how to love myself. And I got such a gift. And just to be able to sit here with you guys, stuff gets me emotional. And I have a life beyond my wildest dreams that I could have never fathomed in a million years. And people search through happiness through all the wrong places, and that drugs and alcohol mask a lot of pain. And you can get that away and get that pain. Pain's a good thing. And learn to walk through it. And be grateful for the little things that I can get up and go open that door and walk out of it, because I don't have a CO saying, lock it up, get in yourself.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that. Sometimes prison's good for people. Sometimes going to jails, people need to be sat down. But boy, it's such a complex industry, and there's some really good people in it. There's a lot of negative, but there's negative and positive in life.
Of course.
Go to a meeting, you got 30 people. 10 are on total bullshit, 10 are on the fence, and 10 are plugged in. I gravitate towards winners.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Well, look, Tim, thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah, this is a really cool experience.
Really?
You kind of opened my eyes to like a whole new thing.
Well, we're going to come back and do more.
That's
This
good.
is awesome, and anything we can do to support you guys, that's what it's all about.
Great. So to finalize, I'm going to link Tim's book in the show notes of the Facebook post and the YouTube video, and we'll link it into the blog post that we're going to create out of this video.
And then we'll link it into the 249er on the flip side of the upside down
Well,
loop.
that's tech lingo. I don't
Oh,
know if you
yeah.
understand that.
We could talk HTML, DHTML, SAP, Java,
Cool.
Java server side,
What do you need me for?
.NET, C#. Where do you want to go? I was a tech recruiter for 23 years.
Cool.
So,
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for watching.
Have a
I
great
appreciate
day.
you. That's the thing with Facebook Live is you always gotta